Got a nice GMC Acadia with an AC problem. I don't know how common this is. It's the first I've seen, but basically right here on this line, you see a pinhole. But this line is long. It snakes all over the place. It's got the high pressure service fitting on it. I'll at least show you the line. This is it. It actually starts down there. It's the lower one of those two lines. Goes out from the condenser up here, drops down, goes behind and under that engine mount. Kind of back here, you can see it nice and shiny. And then above that wire harness over here, and this has rear AC, so it tees into a line right there, comes further over and goes into that thermal expansion valve, which is bolted to the evaporator. So that's what we call the liquid line. That thing is kind of a pain in the butt. You can kind of see it highlighted here. So I figure I'll give you a quick pro tip on how to get her done. You'll need to pull that plastic piece that you see, that long one, sits right here. You also need to pull some screws out of the front fascia, some up here, and that plastic piece is held in by clips. So like, that's how I organize my stuff. Where I started is pulling like clips out like this, and then I had quite a few screws on the top, some Phillips. But then you also have to pry this forward, and there's a 7mm coming through this way. You get those out, and then you can pop the grill out, and then you can give yourself a little room here. And then, so that's all these screws. And then it's easier to remove the coolant overflow, although I'm actually gonna have to pop that hose off to get it back in place. I try to not open the system up too much just to keep it clean. Last thing I want is coolant getting on the belt. Now I got a squealing belt. And then some of the more technical from these things were, you see this tray? This tray is metal, and I popped the engine cover off. That's just like the oil cap and just pull. But basically this tray lays in here like this. Let's take a look at that tray. You need that tray out. Your fuse box is on top of it. So your fuse box has these little clips, and if you pry right on these clips, like right here, that'll slide off of this. This one was broken. This one was broken. I didn't break those. And then, so there was like the one right here. This one was really hard to get to. I guess this one probably would have been easy. But this was not holding at all. This one still kind of holds. And then this one. So what that looks like for you, prying here, prying here, prying, well, the one that was broken I think would be prying here, right? And then the other one in the back, same type of thing. It's in the back, right? So you got to kind of work those off and lift this up. But to lift this up, you're gonna want to undo these big positive cables. But to do that, you really need to disconnect the negative terminal. So negative terminal on this 3-row is in here. Little Torx screw, and pop that out. Then you're safe to disconnect the positives, which was I think 13. Okay, so pull this, and there was at least one more, but you're just pulling a couple of those off this stud. Then you can get this most of the way up. But I found to really get enough room, I undid that connector you see, and also there was a ground right there in that hole I'm looking at, and it's up here now. And it kind of hangs in there, so I left it, right? So undo those things, then you get this lifted up. I've got it wired up, pulled out of the way. Then you can get a bunch of 10s out of here, 10, 10, and 10. And then you can wrestle this piece out. When you get this out, then you can go after this engine mount, which is like a torque mount. So the engine mount's in here like this. The one bolt is coming through that bracket, and the other one is coming through the body. So you got like, that's a bracket on the engine, and that's the actual body. So you get those couple out, and then you sneak this baby out. And then, you can see it turns in a little bit of a job. There's a whole bunch of these 10s holding the line. Like down there too, right? That. There's one more back there. And there's one way under here, you can just barely see. So that one's held by a bolt and then also by a nut. So taking all that stuff out, and then you can work these out. And the only thing I found was I actually undid this one too. So this was a different line, but to get the wiggle room here, I felt like I had to. Then you'll pull that nut right there, pull it off, and then this line will pull forward so you can slip the line out that you need this way. You do all that, and then you got to fish this thing through. It'd be really nice if it was on the front side of that harness right there, but it's not. You see it's behind the harness. So you gotta be like an acrobat and get this thing worked around. Don't bend it too far. I have a feeling, so this guy bought this thing, he doesn't know much about the history, but I have a feeling what happened here, either something was moving a lot, or it looks to me, see how it's all scratched? I think that this was changed fairly recently, and they just were trying to force it through that engine mount area, and actually looked like maybe they bent it up pretty bad, and then it was rubbing on something spinning. I actually could not tell what was hitting that, but something was hitting that at some point. So it's pretty important that you keep that line in its original shape as much as possible. Looks like, shoot, I don't know, something, some belt-driven accessory must have rubbed through there. But the line's in, and then standard protocol: vacuum, add oil, dye if you want, charge the AC. But that line was a little bit of a struggle. And of course, reassemble in the reverse order.